So here we have our roasted beets. We'll be roasting it in a tin foil sack. I'll be using garlic, pepper, salt, and local cold pressed sunflower oil. Now, you take your beets unwashed. They'll be peeled later after they're roasted. Put a couple whole cloves of garlic in, a liberal application of salt, an otherwise liberal application of pepper, and a drizzle of oil. And carefully seal up the tin foil so that you can keep all of the steam in that comes out of the beets. You'll take this packet and put it in the oven at about 350 degrees for an hour to an hour and a half. The way to check their doneness is to skewer them with a knife, and if the knife pulls out cleanly, they're done. Let them cool, and I'll show you how to peel them later. So I'm here with Tom again, and we're making our polenta to go with our pork dish. So in this pot, I've got some milk. It's just coming to a boil, and I've seasoned it with salt. And this is cornmeal, and Tom's going to tell us a little bit more about it while he whisks it together.
Okay. Corn here is grown, a very popular crop in eastern Ontario, but those organic farmers producing it are growing their corn without chemical herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers, in a good natural crop rotation, and with some amount of compost manure for nitrogen. The corn is harvested at fairly high moisture and then dried mechanically, and milled locally. This corn is milled by Mountain Path in North Dundas, and we are one of the retailers of this product here in the region.
So as I add the cornmeal, you'll see it starts to thicken up quite quickly. So we're just going to keep it on a lower temperature and keep it moving until it absorbs most of the moisture.
That's getting pretty thick pretty fast, yes.
So once it has thickened up, we can turn it off and we'll let it rest for a few minutes to absorb the rest of the moisture. We can then rewarm it and put it on the plate. A couple of local pork chops. We're going to create a brine for the pork chops using Bose beer, sugar, and salt. A brine helps to maintain the moisture in the pork while it cooks. It also increases the flavor and makes it slightly more tender. We're going to take a little bit of the sugar. We have about a quarter cup. I'm going to put about a quarter cup of salt in there as well. And we're going to add about a liter of Bose beer. It's important to turn the pork every 10 minutes or so. And you should marinate your pork about 3 to 4 hours in advance. So now that our pork is brine, we're going to pull it out of the brine and lightly dab it on some paper towel to remove some of the extra moisture. This is so that it doesn't spit as much when it enters the pan. So we have a hot pan, it's just starting to smoke, and we have some canola oil in there. We're going to start it on the fat side to render out some of that fat. It'll also make a nice crispy skin on it when we serve it. Okay. Once we get a little bit of color on the fat, we're going to turn it on to the flesh side and start cooking the meat. It could take up to 4 or 5 minutes aside. We're going to test by pressing to see how tender it is. Doneness on pork can range to personal taste, but generally I recommend medium. The pork is about medium rare at this point. We're going to transfer it to a board to rest. You can also use a wire wrap. Through the resting period, it will reabsorb the juices, and it will also go from medium rare to medium. Our pork dish now. Here we have our roasted beets and our polenta. The polenta is a soft polenta, but it looks a little coarser than usual because the polenta we used, the cornmeal we used, was slightly coarser. And here I have glazed carrots. And all we did was we peeled and chopped the carrots. We added about double the amount of water, and a thin slice of butter. You reduce the water until completely evaporated, and what you have left is the butter flavor. All of the nutrients and the sugars found in the carrots are now in the bottom of the pan and add to the flavor of the carrots significantly. We're now going to add our pork. Now that it has rested, we're going to thinly slice it. And fan it on top of the vegetables. We can then put our applesauce with grainy Dijon mustard on top. This helps accentuate the flavor and adds a little sweetness to the dish. So here we have a pan jus. I've taken the pan we cooked the pork in, I added a little bit of water to deglaze the pan, and a little bit of butter to create a sauce. We can now add that to the dish. I'd like to give another thanks to our sponsors: Downtown Business Improvement Association, Schnitzel's, Homestead's Organics, Beau's Brewery, and Stan's Best, as well as Levack Apiaries. It really is amazing to think how many different varieties of produce are available in the SDG area. Please check out our website at www.cornwallfreenews.com for ingredients for our recipes, as well as information about our sponsors. I'm Shawn Kretz, and thank you for joining in and watching Cooking with Kretz.